Well, when will the second rut begin? Well, first off, you have to believe in the second rut. And this is a really unfortunate thing when folks don't believe in the second rut. And I think that that comes from sometimes state wildlife game biologists, because in their training, in their schooling, they'll look at that, they just look at all one big rut. They don't look at the primary rut is here, second rut is here, and then the potential for third rut is here over our timeline. They're just taking that entire timeline and hitting an average. And what that does is, instead of having the primary rut here, here, third rut, let's say this was the, let's just throw some numbers out there. Let's say this was the 10th of November, 10th of December, 10th of January. What it does is, if you combine all those together, even if the second rut is 15% and the third rut is 5% of all those does that are being bred, does it make sense? That's going to skew this average by 15 to 20% overall the wrong direction. So what it's going to say is, instead of, once you figure in these numbers right here, and I'm not going to do the math for you, but bottom line is, if this is the 10th of November, that's the 10th of December, instead of it showing the peak rut as the 10th of November, it's going to show that it's the 18th of November, the 16th, the 15th. I'll throw everything off. Everything. Not all state game departments do that or look at the rut that way, but not every state game department looks at the rut the same across the entire country. It's very different. I've seen the actual rut map data, because through HuntWise, we calculated out for every area zip code when the rut begins, when the pre-rut begins, when the rut lockdown takes place, the peak rut, the post-rut, all those different time periods for everybody, so that they could actually be helped with, hey, the rut's going on in your area, this is what you should be doing right now during the pre-rut, this is why you should be hunting all day now and only mornings at a different time. Very helpful. But in that, they tabulated every state department's rut data, and I'm not kidding, from one state to the next across the borderline, it was a shotgun approach. Completely different. Be completely different from Ohio to Michigan, let alone eastern Ohio versus western Pennsylvania. Then you get into Georgia, it was almost by county. It was like someone took a bunch of colors and threw it on the map. It doesn't take place drastically different across County Road 59 that separates two counties. Just because there's a road does that make sense? It's a state line. So what it tells you is that, you know, these game departments, here's a state line. This one is showing this color. This one's showing another color. And literally the state line is, 50 feet from each other. And they're different by 2 weeks. How could that happen? It happens because they tabulate data differently. So that can really screw things up when you look at scientifically, there's no second rut. It's because some game departments, and then a lot of times because these game departments follow the laws, they follow the rules, they follow the regulations, they follow in line, they do what they're supposed to. It's completely different with like a John Azoga, who studied deer. He has over 100 peer-reviewed articles, most in the country ever. But those guys up there, that's all they did. They just sat around and studied deer, and they basically look for things to peer review. They'd sit there and think, in deep snow, in the deer yards, when there's 240 inches of snow, how much insulation would that snow provide, and how would that contribute to lack of energy loss, so when the snow's deeper, compared to when you had a light snow year but it had cold temperatures? They'd sit around at coffee and think about that. Hey, can we peer review that? That's how that worked. They weren't independent thinkers. I mean, they were independent thinkers. They were an independent thinking group. And Azoga, Lou Verme, there's a Frederick that worked with them too. And you can look up a lot of their deer research. But a lot of state game departments aren't like that. They get in and they say, this is what you do. Don't think, just do. And that's some of the problems we have. And so you have to think. And I don't care if you believe in it or not. That's on you. There's a lot of opportunity to hunt. So if you don't believe in it, you're just hurting yourself. And that's on you. We want people coming to the channel that want to look for better information. They want to help themselves. They want to have a great hunt. They want to have predictable success. And that's what we're here to help you do. If we're not helping you, if we're not teaching you, then what good are the videos? Useless information. So we are independent thinkers. And so when it comes to the second rut, it's real. If you don't believe in it, you're only hurting yourself. And there's reasons not to believe in it, because if you look at, again, some of the State Department data, It really throws things off drastically. And I've looked at all that data for all the states. And it's very, very interesting and telling when you go from one state line to the next, one county line to the next, and things are so drastically different. When does the second rut take place? Because it does happen, 100% certainty fact. Why does the rut lockdown take place? You hear about the rut lockdown? Why does it take place? It takes place because there's a large percentage of does coming into estrus at the same time. But that's not all. Think about it if that happened in the middle of the rut. All of a sudden, a bunch of does are... Well, then you'd have some bucks that are already on does, some that aren't. You don't have this pile of bucks waiting, and so then you'd experience some rut because bucks are coming off does 2 days from now. They're with does for 2 or 3 days at a time. Some are with does already. Some are coming off does looking. There wouldn't be a rut lockdown where you're not seeing any movement. So when does the rut lockdown take place? You have to understand this. Dylan, I don't know if you can see this little white space over here. So let's say there's a trickle part. You have the pre-rut, which around here is like 20th of October, 25th. All of a sudden some does start coming in, and then boy, it ramps up to that traditional peak rut right here. Sometime in here, think about it. Hardly any bucks are on does because hardly any are coming into heat. So you have all these bucks just waiting, young and old, just waiting to breed a doe. All of a sudden, it starts ramping up to an exponential amount every day are coming in. What does that do? That means you have all these bucks that are waiting to breed. Now you have a whole bunch of does coming in, even though it's not the peak, and they're ready to breed. When they're ready to breed, all of a sudden that activity you saw around here on October 29th, October 30th, November 1st, all of a sudden, bam. Scrapes aren't getting hit. And every buck is on a doe because a bunch of does came in at once with that ramp up of the peak rut, and they're willing, ready, able, and just waiting for that time of year. And that's why they're not moving around much. They're all on a doe. And it takes 2 or 3 days. The rut lockdown doesn't take that long. But during that time, if a buck is with a doe, and almost every buck is with a doe, why are bucks searching for does that are coming into heat? They're with them for 2 or 3 days. When they get off that doe, then they'll start looking for another one. That's the peak rut. Right here, and then it starts going down for the post rut. In the middle of the rut, it's random. Bucks are coming, bucks are going, and does will be missed then too. But that rut lockdown, when you want to figure out when, and this is the beginning of the rut. Don't think it's in the middle, don't think it's at the end. I saw people posting, hey, it's a rut lockdown, and it's November 18th in Michigan. No, that's called the end of the rut. That's called the post-rut. That's called, it's on the down slide. It's going down fast, really fast. Look at like some of their data up north in the UP of Michigan, which that was more of a tight window because if fawns are born early, they die because they're in snow. If they're born late, their body sizes aren't big enough to make it through the winter. We're talking winters. Munising averages 180 inches of snow. Marquette averages 175. Munising's Elger County. In the northeast portion of the county, you know how much it averages snow? 293. You know where Shingleton is kind of off to the side of Munising? They average about 235. Keweenaw Peninsula is 305 to 310. We're talking a lot of snow. Some people think we get 100 inches of snow. That's not a lot of snow. We're talking 200 to 300 inches of snow. Very tight window that fawns could be born. So their rut, they found that 85% of the does, 80% of the does right around there were bred within a week of about November 13th. Which means by the November 20th, it's going down quick. Really, really fast because there's only a few does left. And those are usually bred at that 15% rate during the second rut up there. And those fawns probably aren't going to make it, unfortunately. They lose 50% of their fawns in an average winter up there. Average winter. They'll lose up to 90% of fawns in a bad winter. And they'll take 50% of their yearlings out that same winter too. The bottom line is, by the time you get into that time period at the end of the rut, it's, November 18th in Michigan, it's going downhill fast. And that's why a lot of the data is skewed with that second rut. They just included in the primary rut for all does being bred. They just have one average. They don't show those 3 peaks of first rut, primary rut, second rut, third rut, which is there. So if you go 4 weeks after that rut lockdown, which is just after the pre-rut, it's when all of a sudden pre-rut is coming in, lots of rub scrapes. That's when the most rubbing, scraping takes place. A few does start coming in, all of a sudden, bam, the scrapes aren't being hit. That's at the beginning. Like around here, that'd be November 1st, November 2nd, November 3rd, 4th, 5th. We even did, I don't even know if I shared this with Dylan, but we did a little study this year, And I put out down all the tab. I spent about 2 hours looking through all our trail cam photos that we save. We save all the good stuff, all the HD. We're running about 60 cameras between Minnesota and Wisconsin of cell cameras. We save all the best buck videos and pictures. Video for Dylan, pictures for us. I use them in thumbnails. But then all those videos we save, every one of them. And Dylan uses them. That's we put in all our. We get these beautiful HD pictures from Reveal. We're running a lot of cameras. We're very diligent at batteries. And so I went back and looked at about the October 18th all the way through. It was around at that time November 12th, 13th, somewhere around there. And I looked at the number of videos that we got every single day. And then I correlated that with that entire pre-rut, rut lockdown, and it was amazing. You see that ramp up the 20th, 25th of October, go down for the rut lockdown, and then it was really random in there. You know, big numbers towards the 6th, 7th, 8th, 12th. Those are some of the biggest numbers, and then they went down after that. And you could just see it. You could see pre-rut, rut lockdown, and it went back up for the peak rut, and then start going down the post-rut, and then it went up and down. And guess what? We threw in the temperatures. You know, out of our top 5 days out of that entire time, averaged 10 degrees less than our worst 5 days. 57 degree daytime high versus 47 degrees. So very temperature variant too. Not only could you correlate that with temperature, and then we're going to take it one step further and we're going to look at the number of daytime versus nighttime, and we'll have some charts and numbers for you towards the end of December on that, because it's a kind of cool thing to look at. The bottom line is you can see this. If you just look at, throw a bunch of cameras out in 2 states and cover a lot of area, and you can see what happens. The bottom line is you figure out that rut lockdown, which is right around that time. Fast forward about 4 weeks, and that's when your second rut should start taking place, with the thought that that's when does are missed, because all these bucks are already on does. A lot of does are coming into heat. And then after that, it's fairly random. So you have that ramp up. It goes into that time period, and then it's over again. And so by the time we get in November 20th, November 18th, or December 20th, 18th, 17th around us, it's starting to go way down again. But we have a good 10 days in here, and that correlates with our muzzleloader. In fact, Jen shot a beautiful buck last night with Jackson in the blind making tons of noise. We'll have a video coming out about that, probably a couple of them. It was a really cool mommy hunt. I've had Jackson out twice, she's had Jackson out twice, and I can say, and Jen would admit too, Jax acts a lot worse with mommy. You get away with more with mommy. And as far as pounding on the blind, everything. And she had all the windows closed up. It was steamy in there. The windows were fogged up. She had to open a window to shoot, and she got a shot off, beautiful shot, and recovered the buck this morning. It was pretty awesome. And the bottom line is his tarsal glands were stained dark. We found open scrapes in the woods, and it's that time of year. And we found open scrapes in the woods, and it just snowed yesterday morning. So really, we only had about 24 hours of no snow, to where when we saw fresh scrapes, they happened in a 24-hour period, and they're just happening right now. We saw Barry this morning on the prowl, a 6-year-old with a toe injury, so he's limping bad, and that was at like 8:34 a.m. So he was out hour and a half after daylight on the prowl in a spot where he's 200 yards away from his core area. He's probably circling back there. I think he's just looking for does. Unless he was just looking for another bite to eat or something, but he was over the big food plot and around the edge and just walking. So we saw Junior out like that yesterday. He was out there yesterday afternoon, and he was feeding out there yesterday. We saw does running on the food plot back there yesterday. Jake and I could watch it across the valley. We were hunting that food plot. We could see it in the distance. Jen had this buck come up, and it was right with 4 does and feeding out there. So he was with those does feeding, and probably one of them was entering estrus. A lot of times younger deer, and that's another thing too. So when those mothers first come into heat, which would be in this ramp up or up the peak, then those young does, those fawns, and sometimes even yearling does, they'll come in about 4 weeks after that. And that's a biological thing too. So depends on how many young does are in your area, but they're coming in pretty soon here. And we've had a little bit where those bucks can settle down, relax a little bit, kind of replenish. And that's why when the rut dies, there's nothing going on except them going to food sources in the afternoon, evening, and even then they'll wait till after dark. I had Barry the other night sit out at a water hole, licking the water hole for 45 minutes. I thought for sure he'd come out. It was 4:18, And at 5:01 was the last video I had of him. He wasn't there at 5:06. I got the heck out of there and got away, and he was back at that water hole at 7:08, but that's near his food source. And so he was waiting until probably well after dark to go get that. But we get a little ruddy in the second rut, he'll be back out maybe tonight when I go hunt. Mornings and evenings, great time to hunt. Morning by bedding areas, when you know scrapes are open, you know when they're actively in that second rut. Go find your favorite bedding area, stand, sit on the downwind side. Don't go through food in the morning and wait and see what happens. Also, afternoon food source movement, incredible. And so I'm watching that tonight. I'm getting closer to his bedding. Hopefully getting him before he gets out to the food source. If it is after dark, maybe I'll get a glimpse at him. But bottom line is, great evening hunting, great morning hunt, but we don't see a lot of midday movement like they do during the peak rut. Those bucks are ready, they're strong, they're running all over it. It's almost like they're recovering right now, and oh, by the way, there's a second rut. So they're gonna rut in the morning, they're gonna rut in the afternoon. When you get into midday, a lot of times you don't see that traditional all-day movement. So you really are at an advantage if you hunt morning and evening in morning and evening spots, meaning evening, afternoon, and food source movement, morning and bedding area. Try not to confuse the two. You don't want to go into a food source spot in the morning and spook them out. At the same time, you don't want to go into a bedding area in the afternoon and spook out a deer that's already there, that's been there all day. So on the flip side, you can always get into a bedding area in the morning before they get there, and then you can see you have the advantage of being there for hours before you get out of your stand. So there's no deer here, I'm getting out of here. And it's a lot safer. When you go in the afternoon, you have no idea. You don't know where they're at. You don't know if they just moved through. And you have a tendency to spook them going into those bedding areas in the afternoon, a high tendency. That's why not so much during the midday. You have to believe in the second rut. Look at, once you believe it, you understand when it happens, then make your plan to hunt those morning bedding areas when you know those scrapes and rubs are opening back up and you see rubbing activity or rutting activity. Hunt those afternoon food source movement, especially concentrations of does, and then kind of forget about midday movement. Always remember, it's about 4 weeks after that lockdown. That lockdown takes that place at that ramp up. I hope that makes sense to you when the rut's beginning. It's just starting to ramp up. A lot of bucks are on does right then. Just fast forward about 4 weeks and then enjoy that 10-day period. The second rut rarely ever takes place for 2 weeks at a time. 10 days, it's a little bit shorter. And believe in it, hunt it. And what's cool about that, if you believe in the system of rut management that we talk about, that's why I have a rut web class. We go through all these pieces. I described it greatly in my all-weather whitetail book too. But bottom line is, if you believe in this, it's something you can take to the bank with you and plan your hunts around every single season that follows, and that makes it very easy for you. You know what's going on during the season. You know what plans to do. You know whether to hunt afternoon stands, mornings, or both, midday. It gives you a plan that you can count on for decades to come, and you can watch your success rate go through the roof and be consistent when it comes to hunting the rut and, heck, hunting the entire season, all season long. I appreciate you guys watching the YouTube channel, but I don't know if everyone knows everything that we have to offer, whether it's on whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, our website, our WHS Wildlife Blends, our seed company. Also, Instagram you can check out. I'm very active on Instagram, putting strategies on there, photos of what we do every day. Much more active there than Facebook. But our seed, web classes, books, clients, articles. I have over 600 articles on whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, everything whitetail strategy. Of course, we have hats on there, and then make sure to check us out on Instagram again. But lots of stuff to offer. We're always coming out with new things, and this isn't the end of it. We have more things coming soon. Make sure to check us out.